Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Sunday.
And good evening.
And oh, good evening, John. Yeah, got here on time, mate. Yep. Well done, mate. We occasionally get caught out ourselves, and we have people who are
Early
late
or late.
or early. But anyhow, well done. So yes, and you're right. We have got over 1,000 subscribers, and we're really chuffed about that. So now it's just a matter of building on that 1,000, and you never know what could happen in the future. So yeah, that's it. So anyhow, back to what we're doing today. Now the big race is on today, so I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people who've got the TV on in the background. But pay attention here, because you may miss something. Oh, then you can always catch up later, so it really doesn't matter. But anyway, the big race, John Parra, if you're able to get hold of our Aussie TV, Bathurst race is on. You've got to watch it. It is the best race in the world, and
exciting.
It's a very exciting race.
It starts at 11 AM our time.
Yes, 11 o'clock. I think it's the starting, or 11:15 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it'll be a big race. Anyhow, it's a bit like your NASCAR, I suppose.
No, it's better than that. Sorry, John. It's much better than that. It's so exciting.
Short circuit street racing. Anyhow, we're doing woodwork. Let's get on with the show. Okay, so this is where we're up to at this stage. Last week, and I'm trying to remember what we did last week. Last week we built the boxes for the big box. So what we've done so far, or what I did during the week, is I made the inserts for them. So these are the little inserts that go in the bottom of them. I think last week's show, and I should have gone back and had a bit of a look at it, but I didn't. We had just that box like that, and I've dressed up the edges of it and made it fit so that everything works right, and I've made the tray inserts. So we've done that. The next step, is to make the tray for the top of the box. Now what we're going to do is the tray is going to be one big tray that goes across the top of there, and this is the box. This is the tray out of the first box that I showed you earlier. It doesn't actually fit in this box because the box is a different size, but that's the idea. And you'll notice that we're tapered from here to here. Now going back on our revision stuff, what we were doing was revising different techniques on how to use the jig. So if you notice on this one here, I've used the A10 dovetails for this particular box, but the new one for this box here, I'm going to use the H10. So it's a smaller cover, a smaller dovetail again. I'm still going to use the same measurements, so when we've finished we'll actually compare the two, and you'll see the difference between the dovetails. That will give you a bit of an idea of what you would like to do with your boxes. So the technique we're going to use is both ends of the jig, the same technique that we use for our uneven sided boxes, and part of the reason is because we have a piece of tapered timber. Okay, so it's 20 millimeters at the front, and it's approximately 40 millimeters at the back. You can adjust the measurements depending on what you want to do with the box, but that's what we're going to do. Now the technique I showed you, was it last week or the week before?
Last week.
Last week was building the lifter bridge and putting that in place. I've already done that to the material that I'm going to use for this tray. Now, this is the material for the tray, and as you can see, I've got the narrow piece for the front of the box, the wider piece for the back of the box, and I have my tapered sides. And I've also put the bridge in. Now this bridge is a tiny little bit different to that one. The diameter of this is 35mm, and that's where I used my 35mm jig that I showed you last week, and I showed you how to use it last week with double-sided tape. Exactly the same technique. Piece of material, had a hole drilled in it. It was fitted over that, and I ran it over the top edge as a corner, and then I cut it down the middle. From there I had to shape the rest of the box. So it took a little bit of thought, and I was going to do it on the show, but it takes so long to get it right and to work it out that it would take more than an hour. So I thought I'll do it first, and then I'll show you at a later date. But anyhow, this is where we're going today. We're going to build this tray. So I'll get that out of the way. And these are my bits of timber. So the first thing I need to do is cut my dovetails. I want my dovetails in the side of the box. So we're going to have the long pieces there. And as you can see, it's quite a large tray. And the material that I'm using, that's the wrong bit of wood. Try this one.
Ooh. Good save.
That's better.
Yeah.
That was the offcut I had there. So that's what we're going to build today. The thing that's most difficult about this tray is, first of all, its size, and then the thickness of the material. As you can see, we're working with 7mm material. It's only very small, so it takes a little bit of care. And we've got to cut a rebate in the bottom of it and put a base in it, and that's going to be a large piece of timber, so we'll deal with that when the time comes. But right now, let's cut ourselves some joints. So I want the dovetails in the side of the box, so they'll be in the sides here, and the pins will lock the whole lot together. So that's how it's going to be. So we're going to use H10. Our setup with the H10, when you set this up, and I found this with this particular type of setup, we can't, because it's tapered, we can't work in the middle of our jig. There's just no way that we can actually uniformly find places to put this once you get that set up. And what I mean by that is, if I set that up like that, setting up here would be tantamount to disaster. Okay. The other thing is that the gap between the two stops won't allow the clamp to actually fit. So it's not going to fit in the gap. So there are a number of problems that you need to overcome. This is the easiest way that I've found to overcome this problem. First of all, you need to make sure that your size of the material here and here relate to what's happening on your template. And you'll see, if I set that up nice and evenly there, set it up straight, of course, up against the stop, nice and evenly. When you set the other end, do exactly the same thing. Set up exactly the same. And what I'm trying to do is make sure that I've got an even space on both sides of the piece of material. Just doing it by eye. Bring up my other stop. That moved. Just got to go a bit more. Make sure you have it nice and even. Just check this end. I need to fix that one as well. Okay. Now, when we do the other ends, of course we've got to turn it over. You can see that I've got exactly the same amount of material on the bottom. I'm not too concerned about the top. It's more about the bottom, so that my joints will actually line up. Okay, so I have that there. If I turn it over and do it on the other end, I have exactly the same on the other end. So what you can do is you can adjust the size of this material to fit the template. Remember, we're in a box, and the size of the tray, the top and the bottom, doesn't matter because it's going to fit up in the lid. So,
but it's really that bottom edge that's key, isn't it?
Over there. Yeah. So your point has to be, you can see that this is going to sit above the lip of the box, and we've got all of this space in the middle of here to actually cater for the box itself. So the importance of this, it is just relevant to making an even layout of joints. Okay, so that's all you need to worry about. So think about that when you're actually cutting your sizes. You can adjust them as you go. And now that I'm set up, I'm pretty much ready to cut my joints. Just checking it. So I'm going to cut one dovetail there. I'm going to rotate my piece of timber up to the other end and cut the other end of that board. And then I will do the same with this board here. So I'll cut my first joint there, and I'll rotate up and do that one there. Now when it comes to the pins, remember you'll have two boards, and you can actually do them both at the same time. So I can do that board there, and I can do this board here, and then I can just rotate them up here. I'll get exactly the same result. Okay, so the whole lot can be done in just two passes of the jig.
So you need to mark. You need to mark your face side mark.
Yep. As Pammy said, got to do our face side marks. Now, I normally use a piece of chalk, but I want to use a pencil today because it's very difficult for you to see that. I'm choosing, the beauty about this timber that I have here is that it's pretty nondescript in its grain. All you can see are the medullary rays showing up on the piece of timber, so it's really irrelevant which side's out or which side's in, and both pieces of timber are relatively are quite nice, but we still always put our face side mark on there. So that's out, this is out. Okay, so that's my two bits, like so. Front and back, there's no faults in either of these pieces of timber, so we've got to do exactly the same thing. That is the outside. Okay, so the bottom of the box is indicated by our face side mark, so we make sure that the bottom of the box is up against our stops on all pieces. My rule of thumb when you're making a box is always start with the face side mark out and pointing at the red stop, but in this case I'm using both ends of the jig, so that only applies if I'm making.
So it just points towards the stop,
Yep.
regardless of the colour.
Regardless of the colour. And as you can see, there's not a lot to hang on to when we're actually cutting the joint. So you need to be extremely careful when you're working with thinner pieces of material. It's basically just the back edge. I've lifted the clamp a little bit in the clamp holder. At least so I've got a reasonable amount of material on the held by the clamp. Okay, so we're close up. Just want to check We're all good there, we're all good there, we're all good up against here, we're all good up against there. So pretty much ready to cut our first set of joints. So they're going to be the dovetails. Now remember, our first task every time, give your router bits of scrub. It's our first task for the day. A little bit of oil. And then using the opposing piece of material as our height adjuster. Half a millimetre above. And we're ready to cut. And before I do that, I might just scrub the straight bit. Give it a tidy up. So that one there's right, that one's right, and I'm ready to cut myself some joints. So, ears on everybody. Let's make sure everything's locked in. As you can see, that's quite a small dovetail. There's not a lot of material in it, but it's adequate for what we're doing. So now the other end turn.
Face side out, Paul. Face side out.
Face side out. That's exactly right.
Sorry, I couldn't see it.
Now, as you can see, there's a bit more material to actually hang on to here. Don't forget face side mark out. Now this time we're going to get two dovetails, okay, and they're evenly spaced on the board, so that means that they're going to match up to what's happening at the top of the box as well. Okay, ears on. Okay, so now you can see what our dovetail is going to look like. Now, we'll spin our jig around and face side out. As you can see, this one is really thin, only 20 millimeters thick, so there's not a lot of meat in it. You just need to be really careful when you clamp it up and make sure it's clamped up good and solid, and just make sure that you're hard up against the stop from top to bottom, so that we're straight in our when we do the pins. This one, there's a bit more meat there. So as you can see, this technique is not just for doing uneven-sided boxes. The trays sort of uneven. When we did I've got it running the wrong way. When we did this little tray, even though all of the parts are even width, we still use this same technique, so it can work for you whether we've got uneven sided pieces of material, uneven sized piece of materials, or even sized piece of materials. So it'll work for you in both ways. So this is just another one of those techniques that's handy for lots of little things and lots of different things around the boxes.
It speeds up the process.
It speeds up the process a little bit, yeah. It doesn't work if you're trying to expand a joint though. Okay, ears on. See what happens. See what happens when you stand around chatting all day.
Excuse me.
Oh dear.
Well, jobbers interrupters.
Yep. I set it up. I don't see anybody on the screen there catching me out.
You caught it quickly.
Change the route a bit.
They would have picked it though.
Yeah, they would have got me.
Yeah.
Oh well. Make sure you're using the half a mil. Gosh, that was really a disaster.
Oh yeah. Well done.
There will be a little bit of a mark there that I'll have to rectify later, but not that bad.
There's no mark there. You cut it out, I think.
Okay, now you can see this. A comment there from David, giving me jip about something. Just making sure that your face side mark is pointing to the box, to the stop, and the end is out. Very important that you check that to make sure that you do have your face side mark out. We're hard up against our stop on both counts, there and here, and we're hard up against the pin on the. when you're cutting these, take your time with them. Don't rush them. There's no need to hurry. Tend to find that when you're working with really thin pieces of timber like this, and I'm cutting very small dovetails in them or pins, I find that if I rush, I generally make an error that causes a whole lot of grief. So we're finished with our dovetails. Now it's assembly time. Okay. So the easiest way to assemble this is to put your dovetail board with the face side mark down. Sit it down like that so the base of it's at your, sitting down. Make sure your face side marks are out. So you need to have these around the correct way. If you don't, you're not going to fit very well. And you may find that because you're working with a lot thinner material than normal, you'll end up with a little bit of a loose joint. But these ones fit quite nicely. And there's my little tray. Just got to tidy up some little bits of furry bits on the edge of the joints there. This one's got a bit of something jammed in it. I just have to tidy that up a little bit before we glue it together. But basically that's our tray. So that should fit into our box there. Once I've tidied it up, you'll notice that at the top here we're a little bit proud at the top here, and that's because this is tapered. It's not straight like it should be, and the same applies down here. We're just a little bit up, but that doesn't matter. We're going to tidy that up before we actually finish the box. Then it can be done as one of the last things that we do. The important thing to remember is that we have to be flush on the bottoms, and that's exactly what we've got here. It's flush there and there, and like I said, it sticks up a little bit at the top, but we can tidy that up easy enough. Just take it, run a plane along there just to plane that a little bit off or sand it off, whichever way you want to do it. So just a few things like that will occur, so don't be too stressed about it. It should be good. So our next step now is to cut a rebate around the bottom. Now what I'm going to do, you'll notice that this is quite large. It's got a bit of flexibility in it. And if I just put a piece of 4mm material in that, it wouldn't be a real strong box or a strong tray. So what I've done with this one, and I'm going to do it with this one as well, is I've made the base, this one's cedar, that one will be red banksia. I've made the base, and if you've followed me for a while, you'll know that most of the bottoms of the boxes that I do are 4mm thick material. I've made this one 6mm to give it a bit of substance. We've got a very light frame, 7mm thick, so we want something to give it a bit of stability. So I'm going to make it 6mm, but I'm still going to use my rebate cutter. I'm still going to use my rebate cutter to cut a 4mm trench in the bottom, but what I'm also going to do is I'm going to run a rebate around the outside of the trench, okay, so that the piece of material will fit in the trench without having to adjust the size of that, and it will be flat on the bottom of the tray. So just a little feature that makes them look and feel a little bit more substantial. So this is how we go about that. I've just got to fix this this joint here, just get the piece of rubbish out that's actually holding it up. There's a little bit of sawdust caught behind the joint. Notice I support while I remove what's going on here. That's the problem. Just a little piece of sandpaper, just take that edge off there.
Derek was talking to John about looking on YouTube to have a look at Bathurst, the Bathurst 1000. John Parra, if you Google Mark Larkham, Larkham, at the Bathurst, he just does a video describing the track and what the drivers are doing when they're in the car at the time, and it's the most exciting video you'll watch in a long time. It does have a compilation of various crashes and the speed.
Crashes.
Yeah, but it's a very exciting video to watch, John. So even if you don't get onto the race today, have a look at that video. I know I'm preaching to the choir here because all the Aussies are going, oh yeah, yeah, we know, we know. So if you're not on the mountain, you're at home in the lounge room watching.
Yes. We're all good. Just a little bit of furry stuff in the way there. So let's...
Oh, John's watching some of it now.
Okay.
Split screen, John. Or two screens.
Competing priorities here today. Bathurst. Well, that doesn't start till 11 o'clock, so we should be good to get our show done today. Just going to find my bearing. Okie doke. So how do we get the height for this one set so that we've got it nice? Now I've got a piece of 6mm material. Where did I put it? I've got a piece of 6mm material here. As you can see, there's a few borders in it, so we're not going to use that bit. We'll use the good bit. And I want to make sure that the top of the router bit, the top of the cutter, is at the same height as the top of our piece of material here. So the way to do it is this. This is how you set the height for the router bit. So take apart one of the pieces. Sit it on, do it around here so you can see what I'm doing. Sit it on the bench like that. And get yourself a very sharp pencil. Make sure the pencil is really sharp. And just put a mark on your piece of timber. Now, what that will do, that will allow me to cut a 4mm trench here, and then it'll give me a little bit of material here that I have to take off this board. So the best thing to do is set that, and I'll set my height to the line, and we'll go from there. Can you see that line?
Yeah.
Just.
Yeah, just.
Just.
Don't want to describe it too strongly, do you?
Yeah, don't want it too dark, but we'll end up cutting it away anyway, so, but make sure your pencil is exceptionally sharp. Now setting the height for my router bit. We'll use exactly the same technique that we use when we're cutting. You can't see me do it, but I can see what I'm doing. At least I think I can. Just got to get it right. it's a very fine line. There we go. All good. I'm going to put this back together. Safety first. Some people would say, why don't you cut the line, cut the trench in there first? Well, that's not the way we do things. When you put this together, it needs to be really tight, so flush with the bottom, lock one corner down, and then pull it in tight before you lock the second corner in. Same on this end, pull it in tight. Again here. Now, using the fibre reinforced tape will allow you to be able to pull it tight, it won't stretch and it won't move. Just don't leave it on for too long. Okay, now as you can see, there's a big area of work here, so you need to be very careful with your fingers. Keep your fingers outside the tray, but you're going to have to work along a little bit at a time. Alright, so we're all locked up, ready to go. I have my spacing sorted, my earmuffs on, so you should have yours on too. You may have noticed that I went round there twice and I climbed round the whole technique. So I went all the way around it twice. Because it's so thin and so small, it's really difficult to be able to get a good purchase on it, and you'll get a bit of flexibility in the pieces of timber. So we're only a couple of millimetres up from the bottom anyway, and that's because it's a tray. It's not going to have anything done to it apart from getting it flat. So all we need is enough material in the bottom edge of that to support the base when we put the base in. But the beauty about this base is it's going to be flush with the bottom anyway, so it's going to be supported by its own size and sitting flat on the trays that are already in the box.
Cole, Rob McGregor asked, instead of changing the bearing, why not have a sleeve like you use on the finger joints and just slide it on and off the small bearing? But you've got to have a sleeve that fits the small bearing.
First of all, you need a sleeve that fits the small bearing, and secondly, you need one big enough so that we're reducing our depth of cut down to 1 millimetre. What we're doing is we're actually we're reducing our depth of cut from 5 millimetres down to 1.5 millimetres so that we can climb route. And if you try to deal with anything larger than that, or climb route with anything larger than that, you might find yourself in trouble because the router will try and tear it out of your fingers. We're working with a very, very small, thin piece of material, so the less we cut, the better in our beginning cuts. So making some sort of sleeve that would fit over the top of the bearing, and as you can see, the bearing is quite small. You can see the difference in the two. If you can come up with something that helps you in your woodwork, by all means, go ahead and do it. All the help.
Yeah, I understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
When it comes to actually trying to execute that, it's probably a little bit more difficult.
Yep. And it needs to be fairly stable.
Those plastic sleeves burn out and break.
Plastic sleeves
they
tend
can
to burn
be
out and
fragile.
break. We do have them in the F15s, but yeah.
They're custom fitted. They're custom made for the cutter.
Okay. Now, this is the more difficult part. So we've got to go very careful with it. This time what we're doing is we're going to be cutting the extra 3 millimetres or 3.5 millimetres, and we're going to go against the rotation of the router bit this time, so we're going to go this way. So I'll start on the big one, and we'll just work our way around, and we'll go very gently, very slowly. So we need to have the depth of cut, otherwise we're not going to get into the corners. Okay, so let's go. as you can see, quite a difficult task to get that, and it's actually quite nice. You can see that one of the issues that I have with this material is that it's a really difficult and hard material to, you know, like a beech is, this is European beech, and it's quite hard, and you heard the router bit actually struggling to cut it nicely. But because we cut our rebate to start with, we've got nice clean surfaces around the edges of the trench, so or corners. So that technique that I've used there is probably the easiest one to get that done. But again, you need to be extremely careful how you go about it, because as you can see, we're working with very thin and very narrow pieces of timber close to a spinning router bit, and that is never ever a simple task where you can just blaze away any which way you like. You've got to make sure that you're safe about it. So the whole thing is just set up quite nicely now. So all I have to do now is measure up for the base. So grab yourself a piece of paper and a pencil. Now when we do the base, my trench is 5mm deep. Now I'm working with 7mm material, so I've still got 2mm of support around the outside of the box. Now when I measure, I don't measure in the middle, I measure on the edges. This is where all the support is at the moment. If you've got it in the middle, it's a bit flexible. So what I've got there is 207mm to the inside edge. And then if I add 4mm, the 207 plus 7 is 221. And our length, again, same process, right near the edges where the support from the corner is 353, and 4 is 358. Okay, so 358 is the length of my piece of timber. Okay, now need to cut that to size and dress that up and get that ready for fitting. So here's my piece of timber. Now the first thing that I do every time I'm going to cut a piece of timber is I dress up one end of it square to my workshop, the table, so it drops to a table so that I've got it exactly right. So I'm going to use this end of the piece of timber. You may want to adjust things according to your grain, but I've got some stuff here that I don't want to play with, and it's 360, so it comes to about there, so most of that's going to go. So the first thing I do is I will dress up one end. So use one edge as back up against my board. That's generally the straightest side. That on. So just going to take a shaving off the end of it. Now I have a nice clean edge, and from that I can make my measurements. The other thing is that you need to make sure that it's square. Okay, that's perfectly square. Off the back edge, which is what the back edge that I had underneath. Length 358. Just check that that's right. use that for the base of another tray or another box. That's what I want to do. Now, even though I just need to check that now because I just found a piece of sawdust behind it. Now, even though I know it's square, I still like to just trim up the back edge. Just want to make sure that everything is perfectly square. Just check that. That one's square. That one's square. I actually don't need to square up that. I'm going to give you a mouse character width. That was 221. Now my drop saw won't reach out to the end of the piece of timber, but that's okay. What we can do is put a stop on the end. Now if you watch David Stanton, he's got a little slide on his, and I don't have the ruler on mine because mine's a homemade fence. I'm going to work to measurements of my laser. If I just turn that over, got everything square. So there's my piece of timber. What I need to do with that now is I need to round over the corners, and it's a good idea to do that before we go and do our little rebate around the edge of it. So over to our radius jig. Now for those of you who haven't seen this little gadget before, it's just a little jig that I have that it cuts. This is the one that's made by Derek.lark. So there's a if you get onto Derek, you can actually make this one. So what we have is all our four corners are all nicely rounded to the diameter of the router bit that we just used to cut the trench in the box. Okay, back to the bench. Now what I want to do is I want to cut a little rebate there so that I can fit it into my trench. Okay. The router bit that I'm going to use there is the panel raising bit that we actually sell. Now a panel raising bit, you can use the tenon cutter if you like. The panel raising bit is set with 8-degree teeth on it, so that it gives you a nice little shearing cut. So cutting across my grain, so if I cut across the grain here, it's going to be nice and clean because of the shearing action of that particular blade. Now first thing I need to do is I need to get myself a depth. Here's my ruler. Okay, so I've got 5mm there. I need to set about 8mm, so about 8mm in. So I need a fence. I should have got this out before I started, so that I've got one available. Oh gee, we're running out of time. I thought this would take a short amount of time, but it's actually taken us a bit longer than normal. I'm going to keep going until I've got it done. That way at least you can see it's sorted. Now the height of my set, again using my Lark tool, I only need a small amount of material there. Okay. Forgot to unlock it. Trying to hurry now.
Just relax, it's fine.
Okay, as you can see, we're not taking very much off. Now, I normally work from the other side, so I'm going to work from this side here. I'll spin the bench around so that Pam can get the camera on it. And this should be about 8mm to the outside edge. That gives me the 5mm plus 3mm of freeway. Oh, I shifted it. Now, what I might do, and I can use this little piece here, is use this and just give myself, just have a little look at, and this is the rough edge. Push block. I'm just going to do a little test. So, this around so you can see what's going on. Here's on. Oh, wouldn't that? Never pours, but it rains. A bit of tape, they've decided, left it on there too long.
Ugh.
It's all right, don't panic. Okay, so that's a perfect fit. That will do me fine. So now it's just a matter of going around. Choose the nicest side. Doesn't matter, pretty much the same. Okay, so as you can see, just a tiny little rebate around the edge. I might need to take a little bit more off. I didn't press it hard enough. Yep, just need to give it a bit more. Okay, this is going to take a little bit of my tape is stuck and falling apart on me because I left it there. One of the problems you have with fibre tape as long as I can get the port box apart, that's the main thing. There we go. It's just a bit snug in some of those parts, so let's recut. So it is on. Okay, so now we have a perfectly fitting base. It's flush on the bottom, all the way around. It comes up nice and tight. There's a bit of substance to it and it's not so floppy anymore. So all I need to do now is glue that together. But because we've run out of time, I'm going to have to sort of call it quits there, and I will glue that up during the week. And next Sunday, I'm going to have a little play with what happens in the centre of those three trays that I've got there. So keep watching for some new developments with that. And then we're going to go on to another revision, but it's going to be with our B10 templates. So the bigger joints, we're going to have a little play with those as well. So have a good week, everybody. Stay safe. Go the Chevys, and I will see you all next week.